What if I told you that the moment you feel most lost, most unmoored from everything you thought you understood about your life, is often the exact moment when something deeper inside you is beginning to take over, something that has been waiting patiently beneath the surface of all your careful planning, all your strategic thinking, all your attempts to control the unfolding of your days. Most people never recognize this shift because they are looking in the wrong direction. They are looking at what collapsed, at what failed to materialize, at the gap between expectation and reality. They are cataloging their disappointments. They are retracing their steps, trying to find where they went wrong. But what if nothing went wrong at all? What if the dissolution of your plans was not a failure, but an opening? Not a mistake, but an invitation from a part of yourself that speaks in whispers, in hunches, in sudden, inexplicable knowings that arrive without logical preamble. There's a quality to these moments that is difficult to name. You might feel it as a subtle tremor in your chest when you wake in the morning, a sense that the day ahead will not unfold as you imagined. And yet instead of panic, there's a strange calm, a willingness to let the unknown lead you forward. You might notice it in the way your body resists a decision that your mind insists is correct, the way your hand hesitates over the phone, the way your feet carry you down a different street without your conscious permission. These are not random occurrences. They are not the result of confusion or weakness. They are the first stirrings of a faculty that exists in every human being, but is so often drowned out by the noise of ambition, the pressure of expectation, the relentless forward march of goals and deadlines and 5-year plans. This faculty has many names. Some call it intuition. Others call it the voice of the soul. Jung spoke of it as the wisdom of the unconscious, the part of the psyche that sees patterns we cannot yet consciously perceive, that knows things before we know them. It is not mystical in the sense of being otherworldly. It is deeply embodied. It lives in your gut, in the tightening of your throat, in the sudden lightness you feel when you finally say no to something that everyone else thinks you should say yes to. It is the part of you that has been paying attention all along, even when you are not. Most of us spend the majority of our lives trying to impose order on chaos. We make plans because plans give us the illusion of control. We set goals because goals give us direction. We create timelines because timelines make us feel as though we are moving forward, progressing, becoming. And there is nothing inherently wrong with this. Planning is a natural human activity. But what happens when the plan dissolves? What happens when the job you were certain you would get goes to someone else? When the relationship you invested years in suddenly ends? When the project you poured your heart into collapses under its own weight? What happens when the map you were following turns out to be a map of a country you are no longer in? For most people, this is experienced as catastrophe. The ground drops out. The future becomes opaque. The story you are telling yourself about who you are and where you are going suddenly makes no sense. And in that moment of disorientation, there is a choice, though it rarely feels like a choice. You can scramble to rebuild the plan, to force the pieces back together, to reassert control. Or you can pause. You can sit in the wreckage. You can allow yourself to feel the full weight of not knowing. And in that pause, in that uncomfortable, unstructured space, something else begins to emerge. It does not announce itself. It does not arrive with fanfare. It is more like a shift in the quality of the air, a subtle reorientation of your attention. You might find yourself drawn to things you had previously dismissed. A book falls off a shelf, and you pick it up, and it contains exactly the sentence you needed to read. A conversation with a stranger at a bus stop opens a door you did not know existed. You take a walk with no destination in mind, and your feet carry you to a place that feels significant, though you cannot say why. These are not coincidences. They are the language of intuition, the way the unconscious communicates when the conscious mind finally stops shouting. Carl Jung spent much of his life exploring this territory. He understood that the psyche is not a single unified entity, but a complex ecosystem of voices, impulses, images, and energies. The ego, the part of us that thinks and plans and identifies as I, is only one small piece of this ecosystem. Beneath it, around it, supporting it, and sometimes undermining it, is the unconscious, a vast reservoir of potentiality that contains everything we have forgotten, everything we have repressed, everything we have not yet become. The unconscious does not operate according to logic. It operates according to pattern, symbol, resonance. It speaks in dreams, in slips of the tongue, in sudden irrational convictions that turn out to be correct. It orchestrates synchronicities, those moments when the inner and outer worlds align in ways that feel too meaningful to be mere chance. When your plans dissolve, when the structure you built around your life begins to crumble, the ego experiences this as a threat. It feels as though you're losing your footing, your identity, your sense of purpose. But from the perspective of the unconscious, this dissolution is often necessary. The plan you were following may have been based on outdated beliefs, inherited expectations, a version of yourself that you have outgrown. The unconscious knows this. It knows that you are ready for something new, even if your conscious mind is still clinging to the old. And so it begins to dismantle the expectations. It requires silence. It requires boredom. It requires the willingness to sit with yourself without distraction, without the constant input of screens and voices and opinions.
stop trying, that you become passive or resigned. It means that you become more discerning. You begin to notice where your energy naturally flows and where it naturally resists.
You begin to invest your effort in the things that feel alive, that feel resonant, that feel like they're pulling you forward rather than requiring you to push. And when something fails, when a door closes, you pause before immediately trying to force it open again. You ask yourself, what is this failure trying to tell me? What am I being redirected toward? What am I being freed from? This kind of inquiry requires humility. It requires the willingness to admit that you do not always know what is best for you, that your conscious desires and your deeper needs are not always aligned, that the ego's agenda and the soul's agenda are often at odds. The ego wants security, status, recognition. The soul wants growth, authenticity, alignment. And sometimes, in order for the soul to move forward, the ego's plans must be dismantled. This is painful. It feels like loss, but it is also liberation. It is the stripping away of what is false in order to make room for what is true. Over time, as you begin to trust this process, failure becomes less frightening. You begin to see it as part of the natural rhythm of growth, as necessary as the shedding of old skin, as inevitable as the changing of seasons. You begin to approach your life with more flexibility, more curiosity, more willingness to experiment, and to let go of what does not work. And paradoxically, this willingness to fail, this willingness to release your grip on specific outcomes, often leads to a kind of success that is deeper and more satisfying than anything you could have planned. Because it is a success that arises from alignment, from being in the right place at the right time, from saying yes to the opportunities that are truly yours and no to the ones that are not. A fifth sign that intuition is taking the lead is a deepening relationship with your body. You begin to notice that your body has its own intelligence, its own way of knowing that is distinct from the thinking mind. You begin to pay attention to the sensations that arise in your chest, your stomach, your throat, your limbs. You begin to recognize that these sensations are not random, that they are forms of communication, that they're the language through which the unconscious speaks most directly. When you're making a decision that is out of alignment, your body tells you. It tightens. It contracts. It becomes heavy. When you're moving towards something that is right for you, your body tells you that too. It opens. It relaxes. It feels light, expansive, energized. This is not something that can be learned intellectually. It is something that must be felt, practiced, embodied. And it requires a kind of attention that most of us are not trained to cultivate. We are taught to live in our heads, to trust logic and reason, to override the body's signals in service of our goals. We are taught to push through fatigue, to ignore discomfort, to treat the body as a machine that must be managed and controlled. But the body is not a machine. It is a living, sensing organism that is constantly responding to the environment, both external and internal. It knows things before the mind knows them. It registers danger, opportunity, resonance, dissonance, long before these things can be articulated in words. When you begin to listen to your body, when you begin to treat it as a source of wisdom rather than an obstacle to be overcome, your decision-making changes. You stop making choices based solely on what sounds good in theory, and start making choices based on what feels right in practice. You stop forcing yourself into situations that make logical sense, but that leave you feeling drained, disconnected, or numb. You start to honor the signals your body sends, even when they contradict what your mind is telling you, even when they do not make sense to anyone else. This is not always easy. It requires you to slow down. It requires you to pause before making decisions and to check in with yourself, to ask, how does this feel? Not how does this sound, not how does this look, but how does this feel in my body? And then to wait for the answer, to allow the sensations to arise without immediately interpreting them, without rushing to a conclusion. The body speaks in a language that is slower than thought, more subtle than emotion. It speaks in tightness and openness, in heaviness and lightness, in the quality of your breath, in the ease or effort of your movements. And if you're moving too fast, if you're too busy, too distracted, you will miss it. But when you begin to attune to this language, when you begin to trust the body's knowing, you discover a form of guidance that is immediate, reliable, and deeply personal. You discover that you do not need to consult endless sources of external advice, that you do not need to analyze every decision to death, that you already have within you a compass that can tell you, in any given moment, whether you are moving toward alignment or away from it. And this discovery is profoundly empowering. It means that you're not at the mercy of external circumstances, that you're not dependent on others to tell you what is right for you, that you have access to a source of wisdom that is always available, always present, always speaking, if only you are willing to listen. A sixth sign that intuition is taking the lead is a shift in the kinds of questions you ask yourself. You stop asking, "What should I do?" and start asking, "What wants to happen?" You stop asking, "How can I make this work?" and start asking, "Is this mine to do?" You stop asking, "What will others think?" and start asking, "What feels true?" These are not just semantic differences. They represent a fundamental reorientation of your relationship to your life. The first set of questions assumes that you are the sole author of your life, that everything depends on your effort, your will, your ability to force outcomes. The second set of questions assumes that you are part of a larger process, that there are forces at work beyond your conscious control, that your role is not to dictate the outcome, but to participate in the unfolding, to align yourself with what is trying to emerge. This shift in questioning reflects a shift from ego consciousness to a more collaborative relationship with the unconscious. The ego wants to be in charge. It wants to know the plan, to control the variables, to ensure that everything goes according to its design. But the unconscious operates according to a different logic. It is not interested in control. It is interested in wholeness, in integration, in the full expression of who you are meant to become. And sometimes, in order for that to happen, the ego's plans must be set aside. The ego must learn to ask different questions, to listen rather than command, to follow rather than lead. When you begin to ask, "What wants to happen?" you are inviting the unconscious into the conversation. You are acknowledging that you do not have all the answers, that there are dimensions of the situation that you cannot see, that there is a wisdom at work that is larger than your individual perspective. And in that acknowledgement, in that humility, space opens up. New possibilities emerge. Doors that were invisible suddenly become visible. Paths that seemed closed suddenly open. Not because you forced them open, but because you stopped forcing, because you allowed the situation to reveal itself, because you trusted that there's an intelligence at work that knows more than you do. This does not mean that you become passive. It means that you become receptive. You continue to take action, but your action is letting go, of making space for the new. And on the other side of the grief, there is a lightness, a sense of freedom, a feeling of coming home to yourself. You realize that you do not have to perform anymore. You do not have to prove anything to anyone. You do not have to live up to anyone's expectations. You can simply be who you are, value what you value, live according to your own inner sense of what is right and true. A ninth sign that intuition is taking the lead is an increased sensitivity to energy. You begin to notice that certain people, places, and activities drain you while others nourish you. And you begin to take this seriously. You begin to make choices based not on obligation or social expectation, but on how things feel, on whether they add to your energy or deplete it. You start to say no more often. You start to set boundaries. You start to protect your energy as the precious resource that it is. This is not selfishness. This is self-respect. This is the recognition that you cannot give from an empty well, that you cannot be present for others if you are not present for yourself, that you cannot live a life of meaning and purpose if you're constantly exhausted, overwhelmed, drained by people and situations that do not honor who you are. And as you begin to honor your own energy, as you begin to make choices that support your vitality rather than deplete it, you notice that your life becomes more sustainable. You have more to give. You are more creative, more engaged, more alive, because you're no longer running on empty. You are living from a place of fullness, of alignment, of deep inner resource. This sensitivity to energy also makes you more discerning about the information you consume, the media you engage with, the conversations you participate in. You begin to notice that certain kinds of input leave you feeling anxious, scattered, disconnected from yourself, while other kinds of input leave you feeling grounded, inspired, more deeply connected to your own center. And you begin to curate your environment accordingly. You become more intentional about what you allow into your field of awareness. You recognize that your attention is not neutral, that where you place your attention shapes your inner state, and that your inner state shapes the quality of your life. A 10th sign that intuition is taking the lead is a sense of being guided, even when you cannot things happen. It is the life that emerges when you finally stop trying to control the unfolding and start participating in it. When you finally stop leading with your head and start following your heart, your gut, your deepest inner knowing. If this exploration has resonated with you, if it has named something you have been feeling but could not articulate, I invite you to continue this conversation. Leave a comment sharing your own experience of intuition, of plans dissolving, of the unconscious taking the lead. Subscribe to this channel if you want to continue exploring these themes, these depths, these territories of the inner life that are so often overlooked in our fast-paced, externally focused world. And most importantly, take what has been offered here and sit with it. Write about it. Walk with it. Let it settle into your body, into your awareness, into the quiet spaces of your day. Because the real work, the real transformation does not happen in the listening. It happens in the integration, in the slow, patient process of allowing what you have heard to reshape the way you live, the way you see, the way you move through the world. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your willingness to slow down, to listen, to explore these depths with me. May you find the courage to trust your intuition, to honor the dissolving of your plans, to follow the thread that is uniquely yours. May you discover that you are not alone, that you are held, that you are guided, and that the life you're meant to live is already unfolding, quietly, patiently, waiting for you to notice.